What if the most emotionally complicated relationship in a documentary wasn't between two people? Today, we're talking about My Octopus Teacher, the film everyone loved. And I have a hot take. Hey everyone, welcome back. Normally on this podcast, we take a TED Talk and connect its message to learning English. How to speak with confidence, how to have better conversations, that kind of thing. This week, we're doing something a little different. We're using a documentary almost everyone has already seen, My Octopus Teacher on Netflix. So, a quick heads up before we dive in. Get it? Dive in. Octopus Teacher. The ocean. Haha. Okay, that was a bad pun. We're going to talk about this documentary in full today, including how it ends. So if you haven't seen it yet and you're planning to, you might want to save this episode for after you watch it. For everybody else, let's get into it. Now, before we start, here are two questions to keep in mind while you listen. Here are your listening comprehension questions. Number one, what specific danger does the octopus face partway through the film? And how does she survive it? Question two, what lasting change happens in the filmmaker's own life as a direct result of this year in the kelp forest? So keep those in mind, and I'll come back to them at the end. So here's the story. Craig Foster is a South African filmmaker, and when the film begins, he's burnt out, which means he's physically and mentally exhausted from years of high stress work. He goes back to a cove near his childhood home and starts free diving. Free diving, it's diving underwater on a single breath with no oxygen tank. And he does this every single day in cold water without even wearing a wetsuit. And in this kelp forest, now, kelp is a kind of very tall seaweed. You might want to Google it to see what it looks like. And a kelp forest is a large underwater area full of that very tall seaweed. So it's kind of like a underwater forest. So in this kelp forest, he spots a common octopus and he starts observing her day after day for about a year. Slowly, an extraordinary bond forms between them. She begins to trust him completely. At one point, she even reaches out and touches him, almost like a little handshake. But it's not all peaceful. Midway through the film, the octopus is attacked by a pajama shark. It's a predator that hunts smaller sea creatures in that same kelp forest where she lives. And she loses an arm in the attack. She's left vulnerable. Vulnerable means exposed and unprotected. So she has to hide and recover. And she does recover because octopuses can regenerate or regrow lost limbs. And Craig describes this as one of the most moving parts of the entire year that he spends with the octopus. Toward the end of the film, the octopus mates, which for a common octopus, this marks the final stage of her very short life. They typically only live about 1 year. She lays her eggs, she guards them without eating until they hatch, and then she dies shortly after, which is completely natural for this species. It's a fragile ending, though. But the film frames it as part of a full, complete life rather than a tragedy. And that year changes Craig too. By the end, his physical health, his mood, and his sense of purpose are completely revitalized. He grows closer to his son, who also starts diving and filming alongside his dad. And most concretely, that year is what leads him to co fund the Sea Change Project, which is an ocean conservation organization, turning what started as a personal healing journey into ongoing environmental work. So that's what happens in the documentary. But what is this documentary really about underneath all the ocean footage? There are a few things that stand out. First, there's a strong thread of healing through nature. Craig didn't go looking for an octopus. He went looking for a way out of burnout, and nature became almost like therapy for him. Psychologists who've written about this film often connect it to attachment theory, the idea that humans have a deep built in need to form close bonds, and that we're capable of forming them with something as unexpected as a wild sea creature, not just with other people. Second, there's the idea of meaning making. Craig doesn't just watch the octopus, he calls her his teacher. The word choice matters. It reflects our human tendency to look for lessons and purposes in our experiences, especially if it's a difficult period in our life. And third, there's radical respect or non interference. So even when the octopus is in danger from the shark, Craig makes a conscious choice not to step in and rescue her. He lets nature take its course. Some viewers find that beautiful. I personally found it a little hard to watch, and it actually connects to my main issue with this film. So I mentioned I have a hot take about this documentary. Uh, Here's where I disagree with almost everyone. I didn't love this documentary. It bothered me, actually. Everyone talks about how incredible it is that Craig built this relationship with a wild animal. And I will agree that visually the movie is absolutely stunning. It's gorgeous. It's worth the watch for the cinematography. Um, but almost nobody talks about what was happening at home. His relationship with his wife was falling apart during this same period, and the film barely mentions this. He was choosing to spend enormous amounts of time with an octopus instead of with his wife and child. To me, that wasn't devotion, that was obsession, meaning an unhealthy, all consuming focus on one thing. And I don't think the film ever really asks us to sit with that. He was, in a word, consumed by his project. He was completely taken over by it. And I wish the film had been more honest about the cost of that. Okay, now back to those two questions we talked about at the beginning. So, question one was, what specific danger does the octopus face partway through the film, and how does she survive it? Here's the answer. The octopus is attacked by a pajama shark and loses an arm, but she survives by hiding and slowly regenerating the lost limb. And question two was, what lasting change happens in the filmmaker's own life as a direct result of this year in the kelp forest? And that change was his health, his mood, and his relationship with nature and with the natural world. These are completely revitalized. And then he goes on to co fund an ocean conservation organization. So before we wrap up, let's recap today's vocabulary. You can also find the full list with definitions and example sentences on my Substack page. I'll leave a link for that in the description. So, our vocabulary list was free diving, kelp forest, bond, predator, vulnerable, fragile, healing, attachment, meaning making, obsession, obsessive, devotion, disintegrate, consumed by, and thought-provoking. 15 words and phrases, all from one documentary about a man and an octopus. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit like and subscribe, and maybe share it with a friend who might enjoy it too, especially if they've seen the documentary. And I want to hear from you in the comments. Have you seen My Octopus Teacher? What did you think about it? Let me know. And tell me also, what's next? What do you want to talk about in our next podcasts or in future podcasts? I want to hear what your favorite movies, favorite books, maybe other TED Talks. It could even be a TV show, a reality show, a cartoon. It doesn't matter. Just give me your ideas and I'll make it happen. Thank you so much for listening. You can grab today's full transcript and vocabulary list on my Substack. The link is in the description. And if you haven't seen My Octopus Teacher yet, it's currently streaming on Netflix. So I'll see you next week.